ride, let's ride. Let's kick the game proper to the other side. Let's ride, let's ride, let's ride. Let's kick the game proper on the other side.
Welcome to the third episode of the AIDS Life Cycle 10 podcast. My name is Lisa Hatchadorian, and I am a cyclist representative for AIDS Life Cycle. This episode is called The Pod Squad. In a few minutes, you'll meet a young man who's been newly hired to AIDS Life Cycle as a recruitment coordinator, Mr. Dane Blackburn. I have recently indoctrinated him into the Pod Squad, which means that he'll be on the lookout for interviews for this podcast, the interviews that you'll want to hear. But first, Dane's going to share in this podcast some of his story with us. Then later, you'll hear Dane's first interview. Now, Dane chose someone who's been a bit of a ALC superhero of mine, Mr. Tim A. Wood. He is awe-inspiring both in presence and in word, and later you'll hear why I think the A is for awesome. All that coming up after the news.
Let's ride, let's ride. Let's kick the game proper to the other side. Let's ride, let's ride, let's ride. Let's kick the game proper on the other side. Let's ride, let's ride, let's ride. Let's kick the game proper to the other side. Let's ride, let's ride, let's ride. Let's kick the game proper on the other side.
And now the news for AIDS Life Cycle 10, April 2nd through April 15th, 2011. SoCal, we have some great big fat rides coming up in the month of April. Day on the Ride is almost upon us, and for those of you who don't know, this is a fully supported ride that is sort of like a slice of AIDS Life Cycle. This is coming up on April 23rd. And contrary to what it says on the calendar, the RSVP has not opened yet. This is a paid event and includes rest stops with porta potties, bike techs, and sweep vehicles, as well as our lovely roadies to cheer you on. So it really does end up feeling like a day on the ride or a day on AIDS Life Cycle. So come join us if you can. RSVP for this event will open soon on the AIDS Life Cycle calendar, so SoCal peeps, keep a lookout for that. We'll probably be sending out an email that has more information about this as well. And heads up for the end of the month, Shifting Gears Cycling Club is having their annual Santa Barbara ride on April 31st and May 1st in order to make sure that they're ready for AIDS Life Cycle. Every year, Team Shifting Gears does this very well-supported ride up the coast to Santa Barbara and back in one weekend. This year, they will start from one of our classic bike shop sponsors, Helen's Santa Monica, then travel up the coast 100 miles to Santa Barbara on Saturday, where they will stay in a hotel. And then on Sunday, they will ride 100 miles down the coast back to the beginning to Helen Cycles. This is a perfect way to make sure that you are ready for AIDS Life Cycle. So if you're riding in AIDS Life Cycle this year and you're in the Southern California area, consider preparing for ALC by joining Shifting Gears on the Santa Barbara ride. More details for this event are on the Shifting Gears website at www.shiftinggearscycling.com and also on the AIDS Life Cycle calendar. And now I'd like to introduce the first new member of the Pod Squad. Dane was hired on at AIDS Life Cycle just a few short weeks ago. Dane has not yet done AIDS Life Cycle, so he has a unique perspective of AIDS Life Cycle and even of HIV than most of us on staff. Here, Dane shares a bit of that perspective. So Dane, what is it that you like the most about working for AIDS Life Cycle so far?
I've had the opportunity to interface with so many inspiring people, be they my coworkers or be they, complete strangers who call up asking for help and who are willing to share their stories, or the reasons behind why they ride, or there's a whole assortment of stories that I've been privy to, and being the baby of AIDS Life Cycle, in terms of historical appreciation, I don't have a lot of knowledge of what it was really like to have been affected by HIV or AIDS as it was, say, in the early 90s or 80s. I was a little kid, and Pampers and Fruit of the Looms.
How old are you?
I'm 24 years old.
What was the first time that you had ever heard of HIV or AIDS, or had noticed it in your world?
My first real wake-up call for HIV/AIDS was Real World San Francisco. There was a young man on there. He was Latino, I believe.
The name Dane was having trouble remembering was Pedro Zamora.
But he was HIV positive on the show, and he died. And I knew when I was like 12, 13, maybe even younger than that, I knew that I was gay. I knew that I liked men. But of course, I wasn't open about it. But watching him and realizing that this is something that is disproportionately prevalent in the gay community, it made me a little fearful. But there were also so many campaigns going around, like, Wrap It Up, and safe sex was, it was taught.
So the campaigns for safe sex were actually very effective for you.
Very effective, because it's one thing to just have someone tell you, be safe, you don't want to catch anything. It's another thing to see someone die. And he, Real World San Francisco, he literally opened my eyes to what it means to be socially responsible.
Thank you, Dane, for sharing that unique perspective with us, and welcome on board to the Pod Squad. And now, as promised, and without further ado, I will pass the microphone over to Dane Blackburn, who will now become the interviewer for Mr. Tim A. Wood, positive peddler for AIDS Life Cycle.
All right, this is Dane Blackburn, recruitment coordinator for AIDS Life Cycle. I am here with Tim Wood, veteran rider of AIDS Life Cycle, member of POSPEDS, and 5-year veteran going into your 6th year.
Yep.
Tim, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, to get started, your history with the ride, 5 years, and you've raised over $25,000. Give me an idea of how that feels.
It's great. Makes you feel wonderful. I want to take credit for it, but it's all the people that really have been standing behind me for 5 years that have really made this possible. So I would take the thanks, but the thanks really goes to them. So
awesome. Are there any people in particular who have been supporting you like year after year consistently?
Strangely, most of my family and friends have been, even coworkers have been very faithful donors over the years. So I've been wonderfully blessed that all of them have stood behind me year after year. And I hope that they'll continue to stand behind me as we go forward in the future.
I was reading your page on the website, and again, this year marks your 6th consecutive year. And on your page, you make mention of being a little bit on the fence about participating this year. Tell me, why is that?
My hesitation year after year, and I say that I think for like the 3rd or 4th year in a row I've said I'm not going to ride this year. The hesitation is never one physical. It's always one of concern out of my constituency, and I know that people are, especially through hard times, people have been there with me every year, very faithful to donate for the cause. And I'm always leery that I may wear out my welcome, although I've been very blessed that every single one of those people have come back year after year and contributed their funds to such a great cause. So I was on the fence. I told a lot of people last year I was going to take this year off, and some things happened this year that made me want to ride again.
Awesome.
So I'm hoping that they'll support me for year number 6.
Any encouragement that you would give to someone who might be a little bit on the fence, or to someone who's a brand new rider? What would you say to them in terms of getting them on board? And I know this year being the 10th anniversary, huge deal. But what would you say to someone for, AIDS Life Cycle 11 or AIDS Life Cycle 12?
Right. It's a great cause. It's a great cause, and it's a great family of people. I think that's the thing that keeps bringing me back year after year, is that when I first did it, the first year was such a personal accomplishment for me, and since then it's been such a wonderful accomplishment to see what difference it's making in other people's lives, not just from where the funds go here, at the Gay and Lesbian Center and what it gets used for, but just the inspiration the whole ride gives people who have never faced such a tremendous physical challenge before. And it's inspirational. I think that's why I became a ride leader last year, is that it's just kind of fun to see people really step outside their comfort zone like I did. And you're a little bit terrified the first time you do it. You're like, oh my God, can I really do this? And you get done and you think, oh my God, I just rode 550 miles and it's amazing, and you feel just incredible. And if everybody could feel that, it would be we'd have a better world, I think. So it's been I want to keep coming back. I want to keep doing it, and I want to keep trying to help any way that I can. So
awesome. Well, that makes all of us feel spectacular here at AIDS Life Cycle. Going back to your page again, I want to make mention of a specific quote from Nelson Mandela, and he said this in response to the death of his own son in 2005 from AIDS, and I'll read that quote. He says, "Let us give publicity to HIV/AIDS and not hide it, because this is the only way to make it appear like a normal illness. One of the things destroying people with AIDS is the stigma we attach to it." What was significant about this quote to you? Why is this important?
It's really the heart of everything the Positive Peddlers stand for. It's our mission statement to eliminate the stigma of HIV through our positive example, and I think that quote we couldn't have found a better quote to reference, by Mandela about his son. It's really true. There's so much stigma, even in California, where you think there wouldn't be any. It's far less here than it is other places, but there's still so much stigma attached to the disease. And having been on the other side of the fence where some of that stigma is created, I grew up in a very religious, conservative household, and I think that a lot of the stigma of the disease comes from a misunderstanding of sexuality in general. It's way too easy for people to just kind of put a label on things because they don't understand it. And I think the more that we get out, the more that we put that face on the disease, it lets people know that not only is it something that we can combat, we can get a hold of, but it's something that other people don't need to necessarily find themselves, spending the rest of their life wishing or regretting that they hadn't made a better decision for themselves. I mean, we all make mistakes. One of the things that I've told other riders is that, and especially other HIV positive riders, is that there has to come a time in your life where you have to realize that maybe you got this disease like I did because you made a really stupid decision, or maybe a whole series of stupid decisions. People make stupid decisions every day, but we don't judge other people by that single or series of stupid decisions that they made years ago, right? So it's not really fair. I tell you, I want people to realize that they don't have to live with that crazy negative perception of the disease. You have it. It is what it is. It's to me no different than people, ignoring health recommendations about how you eat and coming down with heart disease in a way. So I mean, we're all making choices every day. Some of those more, unfortunate than others, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to live with a lot of regret. So one of the things that I've been so blessed about is watching the other Positive Peddlers on this event, realizing that, wow, they can come out and be happy and live productive lives. I mean, there's a lot of campaigns actually out in the media right now that kind of go to that talk about how you don't have to live behind that shadow anymore. You look at breast cancer and heart disease and all these other health issues out in our society, and the things that help them so much is actually people being able to put a face to the disease. And we want to do that too. We want to say that, hey, it's okay. You don't have to be ashamed if you have it. It's better that you actually understand what the challenges are, and it'll help you manage the disease, help you manage your life, and be more productive all the way around.
That was Tim Wood as interviewed by Dane Blackburn, and thanks to them both. Our next podcast should be due about the same time as your taxes, April 15th. We'll see how that goes.